when we talk about negative advertising, what we always hear is the voters hate it. Why do the campaigns do it? What do you think is the reason that we have so many negative ads, despite during focus groups and when you talk to voters, they always say they hate this type of thing?
Well, I think they love it, frankly, and politics has always been a spectacle. You know, it's entertainment for the masses here. And if you go back to, say, like the 1890s in American history, you know, when you had the Cleveland campaign, you know, his opponents were saying, "Ma, ma, where's my pa? Gone to the White House, ha, ha, ha." Well, that was alleging that Grover Cleveland fathered an illegitimate child, which he did. And, you know, but even going back to the election of 1800, Jefferson and Adams, that was one of the dirtiest campaigns ever. And people like to hear these things. I mean, but I think at a more important level, at least in modern times, if a candidate can't respond effectively to a negative ad, well, how are they going to respond to, say, tough world leaders on the international scene? You know, if Barack Obama can't effectively counter John McCain's attack ads now, well, how is he going to deal with someone like Vladimir Putin? And I think that's what people are looking at, how tough the candidate is. Do they have that mettle that's necessary to be commander-in-chief?
Yeah, I agree. Are you tough enough to take an ad, let alone to debate with the leaders of the world, who many of whom have an intention of destroying the United States? So I agree with you on that one. The other thing that I find interesting are the different types of attack ads and sort of what the public will accept, and do you finally get to a point where the public won't accept it? I mean, you've been talking about these old campaigns from the 19th century where literally they were accusing people of sedition, of out of wedlock children, although they did sort of try that one on Palin when she first announced as vice president. And so I sometimes see a difference between attacking someone on their stands on the issues. We see this all the time, how they voted, as opposed to attacking them on their character, on sort of who they are. I think the public tends to be sort of more accepting of negative ads when you're, for instance, showing a person saying something. I mean, we see that all the time, you know, sort of hoisted on your own petard. Someone says something, they dig these things up and use that against you. That's very common. So far, at least the candidates themselves, I think, have sort of been sticking on the bigger issues rather than the personal attacks, but probably we're going to see those uncorked as well, as you've already said.
Right, we've seen that this weekend. I mean, Sarah Palin really threw a haymaker, you know, questioning Barack Obama's patriotism. There's no other way to put it. And, you know, when you are behind in the polls, as they are in the key battleground states, that's going to happen. Now, Barack Obama's great challenge is, well, how is he going to effectively counter that? And he seems to have a team on the ground that answers in kind to these ads. So they're going to call John McCain desperate and way behind in the polls. So we'll see how that works out.
What I find consistent with the past is the way that the press is obsessed with the advertising. And I think one of the real problems is not only are the voters being bombarded with these negative and attack ads on television as commercials, but you can't turn on a cable news program, a network news program, your local news. You can't go to the internet without seeing the ads as being sort of the lead political story. I mean, you've got horse race stories and you have negative attack ad stories. And so I think what sort of magnifies the power of these attack ads is the media is obsessed with them. As soon as anything comes out, even if it's an internet ad, it goes to cable, it goes to broadcast, and all of a sudden, I mean, this thing just explodes virally, which just reinforces the power of advertising, in particular negative advertising, because who wants to talk about an ad, you know, where someone's sort of smiling and chatting with a family?
Right, that's passé, and I see the technology is overrunning politicians' ability to keep up right now. And I think the other thing here we're underestimating, perhaps, is the power of popular culture. I mean, Saturday Night Live is having more of an influence on this thing in the election than I think any 527, particularly on, say, Sarah Palin's candidacy. I mean, they really had to play catch-up this past week, given what Tina Fey's portrayal has been. So, I mean, I think popular culture, we need to take a close look at that, because they really carry the water for a lot of these campaigns.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this isn't the first time that Saturday Night Live has had an impact. When Hillary Clinton went on
Sure.
Saturday Night Live, it was one of the things that started to rehabilitate her image. I'll tell you, if I was the Republicans, what I would do is have Sarah Palin on that show next Saturday night and have some kind of schizophrenia derby between Tina Fey and Sarah Palin. No, I'm serious, and just sort of show that she's tough enough and human enough to go sort of mano a mano. That's not exactly the right metaphor, with Tina Fey right on it. So I would do that in a heartbeat if I was them.
Or do a Richard Nixon, sock it to me on Laugh-In in 1968 during the campaign. And many people thought that that helped humanize that humorless man that was Richard Nixon and helped win the election.
And so, how would you sort of wrap up just talking to the people who are watching this in terms of how they should be watching negative ads or what they should be learning from negative ads?
I think just take it with a grain of salt and see how the candidate who that ad is aimed against, how they're going to respond to that. I think that's the key factor to take a look at.
Right, and what we've seen really since 1992 is let no attack go unanswered. That was the Bill Clinton mantra, Begalia, James Carville, and what this has done in the past. Sometimes people like Mike Dukakis thought, well, no one's going to believe this. I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm not.
John Kerry made the same mistake 4 years ago.
Absolutely. And people thought, well, who's going to believe this Looney Tune bunch of swift boat veterans? They're not going to have any say. And yet it did great damage. So I guess the lesson is, despite us always wanting to hope that the voters rise up and sort of step to the higher level, unfortunately, these negative attacks work, and that's why they run them.
And they'll always be running until people stop watching them, which is unlikely.